How's it going, folks? This is Mr. Bass, and today I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite crankbaits, and that is the Rapala DT. DT stands for dives to. In other words, it dives so deep, and they come in a few different sizes. A DT 4, 6, 10, 14, 16, and 20. Now here's a great thing about this. Is one of the things I love about these. This is a DT 16, and you can see right on the bill, Rapala dives to 16 feet. And that's super convenient, although when you see a big crankbait like this, you can look and say, all right, that dives pretty deep. But to know exactly is nice. And then here's the bill's beat up on that one. But here's a 4, a DT 4. Let's see if you can read that. Rapala dives to 4 feet. Super, super nice the way that that is printed on the bill of every one of these crankbaits. So what got me to thinking about the DT at the moment is, one, I'm going through some crankbaits and kind of getting ready to fish with some of them. But the other is I got a shipment in the mail, and I'm going to share that with you later, of the newest DT colors. They came out with 5 new colors. Here's one of them, the Big Shad. And the Big Shad became really famous this year because Jacob Wheeler smoked them in a tournament using this color right here. So I'm going to do a separate unboxing video of the new colors here shortly. But what is it about the DT that makes it so special? Depending upon what part of the world you live in, not all crankbaits are created equally. For example, the Wigglewort. Beautiful crankbait. Love these. They're fantastic. And in my part of the world, the Ozarks, these are lights out in the colder months. Wintertime, early spring, late fall, they're killer. But they're not really that effective on other parts. I don't want to disparage them because they probably work. You can catch fish with them anywhere in the world. But there just happens to be something about this Ozark region where they really, really shine. The interesting thing about a DT is they seem to work everywhere, almost everywhere. In fact, I've never heard, I'm sure there's a place, but I've never heard of a part of the country where a DT was fished and just couldn't catch fish. They're just super, super reliable. They're also very consistent. Whether you go to the shallowest, which is the 4, you go to the 10 foot, this is the DT 10, you go to the really deep one like I showed you there, or anything in between, they pretty much run true out of the box. You can count on them every time. They just have a really consistent, reliable, you can count on them sort of feel to them, reliability to them. Which is another thing I love about them. Another thing that's great about the DT is made out of balsa, and so it floats. It's very buoyant, and even though it's not a square bill, it acts like a square bill in that when you get hung up, you can let go of it quickly, and if you haven't really set the hook in really hard, the balsa will float up quickly, and you can unsnag your lure really, really well for a crankbait. Obviously, crankbaits do get snagged. They do break off. You're going to lose them. That's a given. But I like the fact that with a parabolic rod, you can get a lot of DTs unhung without a whole lot of trouble. They're also silent. And everybody needs noisy crankbaits. Here's a Strike King XD, very noisy, loud, great, very effective. But there's times when you need a silent, stealthy crankbait. And that's where these come in. They're silent. If I can hold all the split rings. They're quiet baits. And that really makes them special in certain times of the year, certain times when you need to fish. The silent, stealthy ability of these lures also makes them great on pressured water. For whatever reason, there's usually a sexy new crankbait out there that people are throwing. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. In 2016, around that time, KVD won a Bassmaster Elite Series tournament on Toledo Bend. It was a 4-day long tournament. All 4 days he fished with the Strike King XD lures. I think he was fishing the 6XD, the 8XD, maybe even the 10. And there was 2 specific colors he fished with. One was sexy blueback herring or something like that. The other was barfish. And I remember barfish because I had never heard of it until that tournament. I'd never fished with it until that tournament, but here it is. That's what barfish looks like. Now, what do you think happened on Toledo Bend the very day after that tournament? Everybody went out and bought 6XDs, 8XDs, 10XDs, and barfish. And they're out there throwing them because he just won. I guarantee you couldn't find a barfish anywhere in that town near Toledo Bend. I guarantee you. So this is what I mean. If something's really hot, really sexy, really fired up that everybody's throwing, don't throw it. Throw something different. And in this case, you could throw a Rapala DT that dives about the same depth as whatever he was throwing. Maybe a similar color pattern, but different. And that might get you bites. It might get you more bites than guys throwing the exact same thing that he threw, because these fish are smart. They get conditioned. They figure that stuff out. So having something like a good old, reliable, tried and true DT is, you should just always have one of these in your back pocket, basically. And I do. I've always got one of these in my crankbait box waiting to be thrown when I'm on highly pressured water. They just work great. They work most effectively like most crankbaits when you're hitting the bottom, bouncing off rocks and tree limbs and stuff off the bottom. But they also will work in grass. Obviously they don't work in grass, but through the tops of grass, they really, really do well. They're a very good pre-spawn bait for sure. And I'd say during the pre-spawn, you want to have some DTs locked, loaded, ready to roll. They make a bajillion different colors for these things for any time of the year and any type of water clarity. Obviously, in really clear water, you want more natural colors, kind of like this pearl gray shiner is a great one in really clear water. Also, this blueback herring works great in clear water. Any of those kind of shad patterns, a silver would work really good in clear water. And then when you get in real super dirty stained water, something like this, the fire tiger, the parrot, that works great in dirty water. Hot mustard is going to be one I go to in dirty water. And then you've got certain times of the year when they're eating red crankbaits, right? And of course, red crawdad is one here that's going to work great when they're hitting on red lures. Another one is demon. Demon's another great red crankbait that I like to throw. So you can see they've got tons and tons of different colors. Another one that I throw a lot in this part of the world, because we have a ton of bluegill, is the bluegill. And look how natural it looks. It just really lifelike, beautiful pattern on this one. And you can't go wrong with a bluegill color. Jacob Wheeler showed that they are also great ledge fishing lures. If you're fishing down on Pickwick or Kentucky Lake or any of the Tennessee River lakes where they have big gizzard shad, big blueback herring as well, those kind of big bait fish in the water where you're fishing deep ledges and that sort of thing, the DT20s work great for that kind of thing. So how do I fish it? What kind of rods and reels and that sort of line do I use to fish it? Most of the time, whether it's a DT or any crankbait, I'm going to use a rod with a parabolic action. Okay, for rods, I like a rod in the 7-foot range, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter, but usually around that 7-foot range. And for crankbaits, and particularly the DT series, I like fiberglass rods, although I'll show you one that I use that's kind of a combination. This is one of my favorites right here. This is by St. Croix, and this is their Legend Glass rod. And this is a medium power rod. It has moderate action, so it's a nice moderate taper, and it's got a little whippy end there, as you can see. And it just flings crankbaits very well, and then it absorbs the shock when you set the hook. Usually I'm gonna throw 10 or 12 pound test. I know there's some guys who throw braid for crankbaits, and I just can't stand throwing braid on a bait caster reel. So I don't do it for my crankbaits. I stick with fluorocarbon on my fiberglass rods, and I will use mono some as well. The fiberglass rods, in my opinion, just do a much better job of absorbing the energy when the fish hits into those treble hooks, and you won't pull the treble hooks out as much if you use a fiberglass rod. Here's another fiberglass rod that's one of my favorites. These are made by Dobyns. This is the Champion series. Now these are older, but Dobyns still makes a Champion series rod. This one is the 705 CB glass. It's a little heavy for the smaller DTs, but the big plugs like this size, I would use this on. I have also a 4-power 704 that I tend to use more for the smaller ones. This again is 7 foot long, and it's all fiberglass. It's not as whippy as you can see. It's whippy, but it's a stiffer whippy, if that makes sense. But great rods, these Champion rods from Dobyns. I think they do very well on glass. One that I've just started using about a year ago or so is this Kistler. It's called the Feel and Reel rod. I'll show you this one. And what's interesting is it starts out as a graphite rod, and then as it tapers down, it transitions into fiberglass. And I've been pretty happy with this. This is a 611 medium heavy that I would use on heavier crankbaits, and then on the smaller DTs I have a medium that I throw. So those are 3 options on rods. Generally speaking, anything in that kind of 7-foot range I think will do you fine. You don't absolutely have to have a glass rod to throw these by any means. That's just my personal preference. As far as the reel goes, the bigger the plug and the deeper you're going to be fishing it, the slower reel you want, in my opinion. If I were throwing ledges with that DT20 super deep one, or one of these 16s here, I would throw it with a reel, probably a 5:4:1, something like that gear ratio. Then when I get up into the 10, the DT10 or so, I'm going to go to like a 6:4:1 reel. I'm probably not going to go faster than that. You could fish it to a 7:1 and probably be fine. but I don't tend to fish these super fast. Okay, so one of the things that Mike Iaconelli talks about, and he's one of these guys that was a big pusher of these. He was sponsored by them and really pushed these for a long time. But one of the things that he has talked about that I think is a good idea is something to keep in mind. The DTs work great in that you can start with the shallowest, the 4, and then you can switch up to the 6, and then you can switch up to the 10. And really with just these three crankbaits, the 4, the 6, and the 10, this gives you a lot of versatility. Start with a 4, start fishing from 0 to 4 foot deep with the 4. See how that does for you. If you're not finding fish, you're not getting bit, then you move out a little deeper, you switch to the 6. And I throw the 6 really anywhere from 0 to 6 or even a little more sometimes. I really like to dig them and grind them on the bottom. And so if it says a 6, I'm not just fishing it in 6 feet of water. I'll fish in 5, 4, 3, even a foot of water, especially because it gives you a little bigger profile. Not to say that the 4 doesn't work well in shallow water. The 6 is my all-around favorite, though, the one that I throw more than anything. And then the 10, same thing. If you're not getting hit in the 4 foot range or the 6 foot range, you can move your boat out to the 10 foot range, then start throwing this from 0 to 10, even 11, 12, see how it works. It's a nice versatile combination. You can literally have 3 of the exact same lures in the exact same color and style. If you know this color is working, well, you just go down to the 6 or the 4, and it just gives you some consistency and helps you. It's a great search bait to identify where in the water column those fish are. And that's another just great thing about having a series of lures at a bunch of different depths that make them really awesome. So one of the things is that, you know, we want to be effective as fishermen. We want to be successful as fishermen. But there's a million different options out there. So what do you do when you're faced with what crankbait do I buy? This is one of the great things about the DT series, is you could in effect start with just the DT series of crankbaits. And if that's all, you know, if you're on a limited budget, you could start with a handful of DTs and literally fish them any time of year, fish them all kinds of different depths in the water column. With the difference in colors, you could fish all kinds of different clarity, water clarities from gin clear all the way to super stain. And you would be very successful if you just stuck with the DTs. And that's another great thing. You know, there are other baits out there that are kind of specialty lures that work great in one very specific condition. But when you start buying a bunch of different specialty lures, you end up spending way more money. So if I were just starting out, you know, the DTs would be a good line to start buying and start fishing with. And I think you'd be very happy with that. And you'd find that they're very successful. So this kind of wraps up my little video here on an amazing crankbait, the Rapala DT. And if you haven't tried them, I really strongly suggest you give them a shot. You really will enjoy fishing with them. I think you'll be very happy. You'll be successful. You'll catch fish. This is what they come in the package. This is what they look like. And you can see right there, Rapala DT6 Dives 2. These are great lures. Go out and get you some. I think you'll be very happy that you did. I hope this is helpful. I hope you enjoy it. Share with me what you think about the DTs if you have experience. And if you go get some and go out and do some fishing, share in the comments the success you had. I'd love to see that as well. I hope you enjoyed this. If so, please like, subscribe, and share. I would greatly appreciate that. Until next time, this is Mr. Bass. Happy fishing!